Most people underestimate how much it really costs to retire to Spain, and that mistake can cost you your visa. If we haven't met before, I'm Carly. I've moved to Spain twice, and most recently with my family a couple of years ago. And now I help make the process simpler for people who want to do the same. So here's what it actually costs to retire to Spain on the non-lucrative visa in 2026. I'm basing this on a UK couple because that's who I work with most often. Of course, you can apply on your own or with dependents like children, and in some cases adult dependents as well. The structure is the same, the costs just adjust. Using a couple makes it much easier to understand how the numbers really add up. Before we get into costs, there are a couple of important things that you need to understand first. You do need to qualify for the non-lucrative visa. This isn't a cost, but it is essential. At the moment, you need to show around €28,800 per year for the main applicant and €7,200 per year for each dependent. You don't spend this money, you just need to show that you have access to it, usually through pensions, savings or other passive income. When you come to renew the visa, Spain expects you to show enough money for 2 years because the renewal is granted for 2 years at a time after the initial first year. You'll also need a clean criminal record. You need to apply from outside Spain at your local consulate, and you need private health insurance that meets Spain's requirements, unless you qualify for the S1. If you're not sure whether you qualify, I explain all of this step by step in my free non-lucrative visa cost guide. I've put the link in the description below. So let's talk about the actual costs. What I'm going to do is start with the biggest costs first because these are the ones that really affect your overall budget. Broadly speaking, when you apply for the non-lucrative visa, the main costs come down to private health insurance, the level of support you use to apply for the visa, documents, apostles and translations, the visa application fees themselves, and then some smaller admin and post-arrival costs. So I'm going to go through each of those one by one. Private health insurance is one of the biggest costs, and it's one where people make mistakes. For the non-lucrative visa, private health insurance is required per person. It has to be with a Spanish insurer, equivalent to Spanish public healthcare, no excess, co-payments or exclusions, and it has to be paid up front for 12 months. For retirees, this is often around €1,200 to €2,000 per person per year, sometimes more depending on age and medical history. So for a couple, you're very quickly looking at around €2,400 to €4,000 per year paid up front. You can find cheaper policies online, but cheaper doesn't mean they'll be accepted by the consulate. What I see far too often is people being told at the consulate or shortly after that their policy isn't compliant and then they're scrambling to replace it in a panic. The bigger risk is that the application is delayed or even rejected after you've already spent months preparing documents and paying fees. Health insurance for the non-lucrative visa is not cheap, there's no way around that. But this is very much a case of you get what you pay for. I've put a link to my recommended visa compliant insurers in the description below. Please be careful when you're choosing. Once you've got your head around health insurance, the next potentially big cost is the level of support you decide to use to apply for the visa. This isn't something that everybody pays for, but depending on the route you choose, it can be one of the biggest costs in the whole process. There's essentially 3 ways that you can apply for the NLV. The first option is doing it yourself, which is completely feasible. This is where you organise everything on your own, your documents, the timing, your translations, health insurance, and your consulate appointment. If you go fully DIY, you're not paying for support. So from a cost point of view, it is the cheapest option, but you are taking on all of the admin and responsibility yourself. That's exactly why I created my step-by-step Retirement to Spain guide. It takes you through the full process from where you are right now to living in Spain. Everything is laid out in the right order. It tells you what to do and when, and includes all of the links that you need, so you're not trying to piece this together from Google, Facebook comments, or bits of information that just don't apply to you. If you want to go down the DIY route and you'd like a copy of the guide, put the link in the description below. The second option sits between DIY and using a solicitor, and that's admin support, which is something that I offer through NLV Approved. With NLV Approved, you're still applying yourself, but you're not doing it alone. It's expert admin support and guidance through the non-lucrative visa process. Instead of second guessing everything, you've got me helping you understand what applies to your situation, keeping you on track with timings and helping you with the practical parts that trip people up the most, like documents, apostles, translations, forms, and appointment prep. This is usually the option that people choose when they're thinking, I don't want to mess this up after spending all this time and money. If you want to see exactly what's included in NLV Approved, the link is also in the description below. The third option is using an immigration solicitor. This is where you fully delegate the visa process to somebody else. For a UK household, that's typically costs around £1,800 to £3,500 or more, depending on how straightforward your case is. If you do want to go down the solicitor route and you want a trusted recommendation, there's also a link in the description for my recommended solicitor. So when you're looking at the cost of the non-lucrative visa, this is why the figures vary so much. The visa itself has fairly fixed costs, but health insurance and the level of support that you choose are the two biggest variables. Once you've dealt with those, the remaining costs are more fixed. But it's important to understand them properly because each document has multiple costs attached to it. For UK applicants, each adult needs an ACRO police certificate. The standard service costs £68 per person, so for a couple that's £136. Each certificate then is to be apostilled. A physical apostle, including the return postage, costs £50, 50p per document, so for 2 police certificates that's £101. And then each police certificate also needs to be sworn translated into Spanish. Realistically, the average cost is around £60 per document, so £120 per couple. So for a couple, your police certificates come out at around £357 in total. If you're applying as a couple, you'll usually also need your marriage certificate if you're married. A UK marriage certificate copy costs around £16. That then needs to be apostilled and sworn translated, so the marriage certificate comes out around £130. You're also going to need medical letters. For the non-lucrative visa, you don't need a medical exam, but what you need is a medical letter confirming that you don't have any diseases that could pose a public health risk. You can often get this from your GP for free, but if they won't provide it, a private GP or clinic will usually charge around £100 per person. It could be less, but safe to budget around £200 for the letters themselves. Each medical letter then needs to be apostilled and translated. So once that's been done, you're looking at around £221 if your GP provides it for free, and possibly another couple of hundred if you're needing to pay for it. When you add up the police certificates, the marriage certificate, medical letters, apostles, return postage, translations, realistic document total for a UK couple is around £700. On top of that, you've then got the actual visa application fees. These are paid per applicant at your consulate appointment. For UK applicants, the fee is around £500 per person. So for a couple, you should budget around £1,000. This fee is non-refundable, so you want to make sure that you get everything else right. There's also small admin costs, like printing multiple copies of your documents, passport photos and folders. For most couples, this could come to around £50. You'll also need to factor in travel to the consulate, depending on where you live. So budgeting £100 to £200 is sensible in case you need to stay overnight, for example. If you live next door, then obviously not. Once you arrive in Spain, there's still a few visa-related admin costs, such as the TA card fee, passport photos, and these are usually charged per person. That'll come in around €25 each, so for a couple that's another €50. One other cost that people often forget is tax planning. If you spend more than 183 days in Spain, you're likely to become a tax resident, and that can affect pensions, savings, investments and income. At a minimum, I recommend having a call with a Spanish tax advisor. This typically costs around €230 for an initial consultation. If you want an introduction to a trusted cross-border tax advisor, you can drop me an email, and my email address is in the description below. This isn't technically a visa cost, but it is very important. So when you put all of this together, for a UK couple applying DIY using standard services, most people are realistically spending around £4,300 to £6,000 on the visa process itself. That does not include accommodation, removals, cost of living or ongoing taxes. It is purely the cost of getting the non-lucrative visa approved and set up properly. From there, the biggest thing that changes the cost is the level of support that you choose, whether it's doing yourself with the guide, getting admin support through NLV approved, or using a solicitor. So when people ask how much it costs to retire to Spain on the non-lucrative visa, this is why the answer isn't just one number. Some costs are fixed, some are per person, and some depend entirely on the choices you make, particularly around health insurance and support. The important thing is understanding these costs before you start so you can plan properly and avoid last-minute stress and cost. If you want to do it yourself, the step-by-step guide takes you through the full process from where you are now to living to Spain, and everything in order with all of the links included. And if you want hands-on help without paying solicitor fees, that's exactly why I created NLV Approved. And if you're not sure which route makes sense to you, you can book a call with me and we'll talk it through properly. Make sure you hit follow or subscribe because I share practical, up-to-date information like this all the time for people planning to move to Spain, especially around visas, costs, and getting it right first time.